All right, everyone, we'll get going with our session today on emotional intelligence and adaptability. I'll just request everyone to keep themselves on mute as we get going. We will have people that keep joining us as we go forward with these workshops. This is now the fourth week of these sessions that we've been running. Just a quick check though, maybe in the chat box, if somebody could let me know, can you guys hear me well? Just in the chat box, if I can just get some feedback as to can you guys hear me? Fantastic. Hadi says good, and we're good to go. All right, guys, so 1 hour, lots to talk to you about. This is the fourth week we've been doing these workshops since this whole crisis, coronavirus, since we got a haircut the last time. A lot's changed over the past a month or so. Our life is changed. We keep having these calls regularly, just kind of bring everyone together. We've got the way we run it, for those of you who've been on these sessions before, is we run it as a bit of a best practices forum. So we get to share and hear from people from all over the world. We should have about 50, 60 odd people on the call very shortly. So what we'll do is in this call, everybody will have an opportunity to get to share their views on what we're going through right now. I'll talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. My name is Omar Hayat. For the past 13 years, that's the world that I've operated in. I've had the pleasure and privilege of training about 50,000 people now over the past 12. I used to be a much younger person before. And the idea is just to share with you some best practices we've picked up. First question for you then, and just to set this up, this is not a monotonic death by PowerPoint webinar. I do hope that you'll get to share your views and insights as we get going. So the first question then for you in the chat box, love to hear from you, this idea of emotional intelligence. When you kind of come across this word, emotional intelligence, what's the first thing that kind of comes to your mind? Just love to hear from you in the chat box then. When you hear the word emotional intelligence, all the huggy, feely, touchy, Care Bear, Smurf kind of stuff. Love to hear from you. What's the first word that comes to your mind? Somebody says superpower. We've got some celebrities with us as well. We've got Alexandra from Employee Wellness, a big name on the call with us. Saba is on the call with us from nutrition, from the world of nutrition. We'll get you involved, Saba, as well, soon have a conversation with you. We've got Hassan Sherwani on the call with us as well, a big marketing guru on the call. So we'll get you guys involved here shortly. And as we keep going, please feel free to share your thoughts. So power, obviously, emotional intelligence. Hadi says, becoming aware of your own emotions and those of others as well. I'd love to hear from you. Please do keep sharing in the chat box your thoughts on what EI and emotional intelligence is all about. Well, again, just a quick little setup before we go into the actual call. Remember, the objective of these sessions is for us to learn together. Talking is not teaching and listening is not learning. So the more we engage, the more we learn. So a little bit of that kind of managing emotions, right? So I'll set this up for you. For me, emotional intelligence is showing the right emotion at the right time with the right person in the right amount, right? So there's a difference between being emotional and between being emotionally intelligent. It'll be interesting to discuss with you from a perspective of our organizational emotional intelligence. Maybe over the years, you'll agree that emotions became a bad word, right? So somebody was too weak, right, if they were too emotional. Let me ask you guys a question. If you've got young kids, right, if you've got young kids, your son or your daughter, or even a niece or a nephew, let me ask you a question, an honest question. Let's say your son or your daughter come home from school and they show you their report card, and their report card says A, C, F. Be honest in the chat box. What's the first thing your eyes go on? Let's say the report card says A, C, F. What's the first thing you see on the report card, right? Typically, Zubina says an F. Well, we've got Zubina as well from PSTD. Welcome, Zubina. So we've, typically the eyes go towards the F. Let me ask you a question then. Love to hear from you in the chat box. Why do our eyes go towards the F, right? Why is it that, we don't say, well, you had a B in physics last time, now you have an A, or you had a C in chemistry, now let's go celebrate your success. Why do our eyes go towards the F? What do you guys think? right? What do you guys think? Why do our eyes go towards the F? In a typical performance appraisal, how much time gets spent on what went well and how much time gets spent on what you could do better is? So typically, and Alexandra says because we're negative all the time, and we'll talk a little bit about negativity and positivity. Zubina says, well, we're looking for imperfection. Well, my question is why? Why do our eyes go towards the gap? Why do most people talk about things they don't have in their life as opposed to things they have? Why is CNN, which stands for Constant Negative News, some of the highest rated news organizations in the world? There was an article, there was a newspaper out in the US that started out a couple of years ago saying, we're only going to publish positive news. They were bankrupt in 6 months, right? So why do our eyes go towards the F? So look, for those of you, obviously, kind of my background a little bit around psychology and understanding the human brain and why people behave the way they do. Well, look, most of us are left brain individuals, right? I'm sure many of the people on our call today will be familiar with this left brain, right brain kind of setup. A lot of discussion in academia now if that really stands, but for the purpose of our call, left brain thinking. May I ask you quickly then in the chat box, what kind of thinking comes from the left brain, like the left side of our head? Just quickly in the chat box, love to have your engagement. What kind of thinking happens from the left brain, from the left side of our head? Hassan says, creativity. Actually, Hassan, the left side of our brain is actually the more logical, like Aswar says, the logical, factual, scientific, mathematical, engineering, finance. We've got some finance professionals on the call as well. What about the right brain then? The right brain, obviously, then the more creative, artistic, emotionally intelligent side of the brain. Now, whether we've got people from different countries on the phone as well. Now, whether you went to school in Pakistan or the Middle East or Europe, I see some people out from South Asia as well. Let me ask you, whichever part of the world that you went to school in, what part of the brain do they develop in our typical school system? In the two typical schools, left or right brain? What would you say, left brain or right brain, typical school system? Thusfer says left brain. I'm hoping somebody says neither, in my case at least. But a typical, schooling system, you develop the left brain, right? So we grew up to be accountants and engineers. We've got Arshad Gadit on the call as well, a senior accountant and audit background. We'll get him involved a little bit as well. So most of us are kind of left brain individuals, right? So we grow up with higher IQ. Well, guys, the reality is that IQ gets you hired, EQ gets you promoted, emotional quotient. Let's look a little bit at some of the statistics going around here, right? Emotional intelligence statistics. We've got people from different industries. You'll be interested to know that people who have a higher EQ typically make quite a bit more money than those with lower amounts of EQ. What are some things inside emotional quotient, right? We won't have the time to go through all of them, but things like self-awareness, self-expression, self-appraisal, objectivity. You've got stress management, impulse control, optimism, achievement drive, contentment, empathy, social skills, social orientation, all of those things within emotional intelligence. What an important topic in the world we're living in today. This idea of how not only to stay positive ourselves, but to give positivity to those around us. And in the last little bit of our call, we'll talk about leadership and how important that is. So I'm going to put this up on the screen, guys, and what I'm going to do is love to kind of get some comments from you on the chat box going here. There's various paradigms on emotional intelligence, whichever part of academia you look at, the European side, the American side. But this is typically the setup of an emotional intelligence paradigm, right? So these are the things you see inside typical emotional intelligence curriculum. So you'll see a big focus on something like self-awareness. In fact, when you do EQ testing, and I'd strongly recommend for you, there's many free links on Google. In fact, at the end of our call, I'll put some links as well where you can just have an EQ test, all right? Find out what your emotional quotient is, or just ask your spouse. They'll tell you. No. So typically, if you want to find out what your EQ is, they'll measure self-awareness, they'll manage self-management, they'll manage social awareness. and typically relationship management. The most important one, I'd say, in there, typically, because it's a weighted average test, right? So not everything is weighted the same. Emotional self-awareness gets ranked the highest, right? Which is the ability to know how you behave and why you behave the way you do. So what are things inside self-awareness? Like, your own, strengths and weaknesses, your own passions, an acute awareness of your fears. In some of our previous calls, we've talked about fears, and we've spoken about, how many fears we're born with and how many fears we learn, and fear of rejection and loss and failure, fears we were not born with. We learned them, and the good news is we can unlearn them. And obviously self-management as well, where you have things like emotional self-control, things like stress management and impulse control. What an important topic. A couple of weeks ago, we ran a full workshop on stress management and the physiological impacts of stress management. In order to just get some viewpoints from other people as well, just like to bring in one of our we have somebody on our call with us. We've got Saba Mirza on the call with us. Saba is a Canadian board certified dietitian. Obviously, her background is in nutrition and biology. Just for maybe 60 seconds, Saba, just love to hear from you if you want to unmute yourself. You've, over the past few years, Saba, looked at the kind of a connection between how the human mind thinks and the link between that and physiology. Since we're living in this coronavirus world where nobody's getting out much and people are kind of stuck where they are. Love to hear from you, Saba. What is the kind of link between the physiological side of things and diet and nutrition, and how it's all linked to stress management and self-management? Saba, you want to unmute yourself? 60 seconds, over to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Very good, go ahead.
Perfect, thank you, Omar. 60 seconds is ambitious. I will try to do my best.
Very good.
I think an important aspect of health, which is rarely discussed, is what goes on between the two ears. So that is the internal dialogue that's initiated by our perception of events and the subsequent thoughts and emotions that we experience. So it's a very clever design. Our brain communicates directly with our body in real time via electrical and chemical signals. So I think one example to help everybody visualize this, and one that we probably all lived, except for Omar, maybe you've never lived this, is when we have to get up in front of class and give a presentation and we get nervous and our fear takes over. And then what happens to our body? Our heart starts to race, we get sweaty, our hands get clammy, our mouth gets dry, and we choke. This is the very physical manifestation of an emotion that we felt, fear, and how our brain then communicated to our body. It told us to initiate a life-saving maneuver, even though we were in no imminent danger. So our mind and our emotions are very powerful. To not be conscious of them and to not be aware of them is actually quite reckless, not just in our professional and personal relationships, but also in terms of our health. The reason is because we're initiating, yeah, did you want to
let me ask you, I mean, so what do you say then, this concept of self-control? You probably can't control emotions. You can probably manage them, but you probably can't control emotions. What do you think?
You can, so perhaps the semantics of it are quite different, but you can move away from a place of reactivity, where you're simply reacting to things, to a place where you can just become aware of your emotions in a more non-judgmental way, and then mitigate your response to it. So doing that can actually manage your stress upstream before the stress management portion. You can actually change that internal.
My apologies. I'm going to bring you back a little bit later on towards kind of half of our session, because I want you to reflect a little bit with us on some of the things people can be doing right now, because everybody's cooped up in their house, to be able to manage their emotions better from a diet perspective as well, from exercise. I know that's your background. Let me keep going a little bit because I'm conscious of time. I do want to have other people's input as well. Let me ask you guys, very important, love to hear from you in the chat box. You've got a screen up here which shows you the different areas of emotional intelligence. In the chat box then, can I get you to let me know, from these various aspects of EI and EQ, which one do you think in the world we live in right now is the most relevant? Which one is something that you'd like to kind of work on in this time that we have? Because very soon, inshallah, as we say, This thing will go away. Life will go on in some shape or form, and then we're all going to get busy again. Right? Right? It's no more. People are like, what are you doing? I'm too busy. Doing what? All right? Everybody's busy, and maybe managing remote teams and working from home is actually making us busier. People are working longer than they were before. But love to hear from you in the chat box. Of all the various components of emotional intelligence that you see on the screen, in the time we're living in right now, which one do you think are the most important? Alexandra says positive outlook, right? The ability to think positive. Quickly, Alexandra, while I get other people on the call, love to get you to come in, Alexandra, 30 to 60 seconds. You've obviously done a ton of work, Alexandra, around the world and in the UAE on employee wellness, mental well-being. What are you seeing, Alexandra? Positivity or negativity? What are you seeing around you? And any ideas on how do we kind of stay more positive? Something you're doing maybe in your organization. Alexandra, 30 to 60 seconds. You want to unmute yourself?
Good morning, everyone. The positive outlook is, I think, the most important thing at this moment, because we are crushed by the bad news. We're seeing the economy collapsing, and people are getting stressed, and we have kids at home, and there is a lot of pressure. So trying to see this positive things and choosing how we're going to interpret everything what we hear is very important. And also, if you're getting stressed, you eat too much, you put on weight, you don't feel like exercise. So trying to exercise a little bit, trying to have the positive outlook, trying to work out on what you eat, I think is very important now.
Thank you, Alexandra, and definitely we'll keep hearing from you as well. Look, somebody was saying the other day, maybe after the coronavirus we will be able to go out, but then everybody's going to be too big to fit through the door. So maybe we won't be able to go out because we're just too fat. So this idea of positive outlook and adaptability. Just one thing around positivity, right? So there's about 1,100 PhD papers written on the topic of positivity and negativity around, are we kind of born positive or do we become positive, right? So nature or nurture. Love to hear from you quickly then in the chat box, your thoughts. Would you say, is this something we are born with or is it something we learn? What do you think? Positivity, nature or nurture? Love to hear from you quickly. Nature or nurture? Syed says it's learned. We've got Shamim on the call as well. Welcome, Shamim. So organizational awareness, well, I'd just love to hear from you. Is it, Ahmed, love to hear from you around nature or nurture. Zubina from PSTD says it's nurture. So we're kind of born average or born, neutral, and then either we become positive or Amir says nurture. Amir Salim says a bit of both, actually. Saba says nurture about 80%, right? So like I said, about 1,100 PhD papers written on the topic, no conclusion yet. Here's what I think. I think human beings are positive creatures. Like I think we wake up every day thinking that today will be better than yesterday, right? And if for those of you where people got, Salam Al-Kindi's in the house as well, a senior HR leader from Oman as well. Some of us in countries and places where, a lot of people kind of don't have what we have. We have a call coming up at 3 p.m. with a charity a leader from Pakistan talking about the incredible pain we're seeing in places like Pakistan and countries where nutrition and food is becoming the biggest problem as opposed to Netflix, right? So people got real problems, and in this time, right, I genuinely believe we wake up every day thinking that today will be better than yesterday. But then something happens to us, right, where we become negative. Do you know any negative people in your life? How you unmuted yourself? You know any negative people in your? Do you know any people in your life? Wait. Do you know any people in your life where your success makes them unhappy or sad or mad? That it's not enough that they succeed for it to be a great day. You have to fail also. That's a great day. What happened to us? The world's coming to an end, and people still, worried about how many likes on Facebook they have, right? Just talk about perspective and how things change. Says my husband. Look, I wanted to kind of tell you, as you know, this is a sequence of calls we have. We're getting quite a bit of demand coming in from organizations, HR heads, asking us to come do these sessions for 1 hour, 90-minute virtual. These are called VILTs, virtual instructor-led trainings. This is not death by PowerPoint, not a webinar. The idea is to get you guys involved. Love for you to look at these topics, especially if you're a manager or if you are a leader, a business owner. I know we've got some business owners on the call as well. Please do reflect on this. If not now, when are we going to develop ourselves? When are we going to develop our people? What's going to happen very soon is hopefully, inshallah, this is going to lift, and then we're all going to get busy again. And this opportunity we had to develop ourselves for EQ and all these things, maybe we'll miss out. Hassan, talking a little bit about EQ resources. I will absolutely, some of you would have received an email from Mariam as well. So we'll definitely be sharing not only the recording of this session, but also some of the tips. I will share our YouTube channel. Who would have thought a month ago, if I thought I would be saying, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Who would have thought? But that's the world we live in now. So I'll give you that YouTube channel to subscribe to. Look, just to go quickly into some of these conversations, and in about 10 minutes or 8 minutes or so, I am going to divide you guys into breakout rooms, because I do want an opportunity for you guys to share with a smaller group what's happening in your organizations. Just a quick check then. Can I get in the chat box some of the industries we have? What industries do we have? We've got aviation. Salam al-Kindi, aviation. What? Not at all busy at all. Nothing to do for Salam. No, I'm kidding. No. We've got Arshad on the call, accounting, finance, advertising. Malik, welcome. Ali Raza, of course, hygiene, personal care. Zubina, of course, learning and development, and doing a fantastic job out in Pakistan for many, many years. Looking at training and development of people. Imran, financial, brokerage. Asif in accounting. Adnan, obviously, power and water. Interesting. We have so many finance people, not to compare IQ and EQ, but IQ very, very high, EQ something maybe we need to work on. So we've got people from all over the different aspects. I'll give you an opportunity to go into smaller groups and just a 5 to 7 minute conversation with some of your peers as to what you're seeing in your industry. And what I need you to do in those calls is tell us what you're doing as a leader, as a manager. And remember, I'm not talking about structural authority. Leadership has got nothing to do with structural titles. The janitor's a leader, the CEO is a leader, and we're all leaders definitely at home in our lives. But I'd love to hear from you in that breakout room is what you're doing for EI. What are you doing from a relationship management perspective, from an empathy, from a stress management perspective? I'll set up that call in a little bit. We've got Hassan Amin in the house as well, a senior leadership guru with us. Hassan will get you involved in a little bit as well. So remember self-management, this idea of emotional self-control. We had Saba talking to us before about this idea of we have a stimulus, right? So we see the stimulus, the body reacts first, the mind processes it, and then boom, we show emotions, right? That emotion chain that gets set up. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that amygdala hijack, right? Where all of a sudden you get that nasty email from the boss, or you get that WhatsApp message, and then you're like, why? Right? And then after a few minutes, after a few hours, not so bad, right? Not so bad. Look, nothing in life is as bad as it seems the first time around. Nothing in life is as bad as it seems the first time around. So impulse control, right? Maybe some of you are familiar with the marshmallow experiment. I'll cover it quickly, right? Many, many years ago, they took these students and they put them in a room and they put a little candy or a marshmallow in front of them. And they told them, if you don't touch this for 5 minutes, we'll give you another one, right? And they put a little camera and they observed how these kids behaved. They saw some of them didn't have the candy, or some of them, they waited 2 minutes, they couldn't wait, they ate the candy. Some of them licked it and they put it back to see that nobody was watching, right? And then what they did is they tracked these kids for close to 30 years. For 30 years, they tracked them. They did other experiments, and they tracked how these kids did in life, like what kind of jobs they had, how much money they made, how many friends they had, every indicator of life success. And here's what they found out. On every major indicator of life success, children who practiced more impulse control, who thought before they spoke, and they waited a second, or they slept on that email that they'd written and they said, I'll send it tomorrow, did better than children who did not, right? So this idea of impulse control strongly linked to self-management. Let me move on, talk a little bit, a very important topic. Love to hear from you, a relevant topic. Hassan Amin, if you're here with us, I'd love you to speak a little bit about this, because I know you've been involved in leadership for many, many years. 30 seconds maybe. Empathy, this topic of empathy. Love to hear from you. Do you think, let me ask you a philosophical question. We've got people from all over the world. Let me ask you philosophically, do you think in this time, what we're living in now, do you think people become more empathic or become less empathic? So just love to hear from you in the chat box. Hassan Amin, if you're there with us, you can unmute yourself and let us know what you think. Hassan Sherwani, love to hear from you as well. If you want to unmute yourself, 30 seconds. Do you think people become more empathic or less empathic? I mean, do you think it becomes all about self-preservation? So it'll become about me, myself, and I. So self-orientation goes up.
I think it has to do with the times that we are in. So it's a collective social response. We have to save ourselves to save others. So in that case, we are in general more empathetic these days, because it's a social fight that we all are fighting these days.
Fantastic. And maybe there's an element of collectivity as well, right? People are generally, like we're doing things that we wouldn't do otherwise, right? Like, I love to see how everybody's on time on these web calls, right? For 13 years, how many workshops have I done, especially in the Middle East and South Asia, where 9 o'clock is 9:30, and here we go on Zoom calls, boom, everyone's on time. So maybe some behaviors are changing. Hadi says we do become more empathic. So look, guys, we've said this on previous calls as well, and I want to emphasize this. Happiness, and people have done tons of work on happiness and the definition of what qana in Arabic and rida, this concept of satisfaction and contentment. The more you give, the more you get. The way we are set up in Arabic, we call it fitra, right? That kind of the preconditioning we have is that the more we give, the better we feel. I said in one of our previous calls, when they said this idea of looking at the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins in the hormones, in the blood of people who committed random acts of kindness, and those people who received the random acts of kindness. So calling your parents to tell them how much you love them, and calling your old friend to tell them, well done, or just sending those messages, not broadcasting, but sending those messages to your friends to tell them, listen, I just want to touch base with you. How's your family? How are you doing? Would you believe that the level of oxytocin, endorphin, dopamine, and serotonin were higher in the bloods of people who committed the act of kindness than those who received it? So making other people feel happier made you feel happier as well. I'm going to go into these breakout rooms in a little bit. Mona, if you're here with us, Mona Abdurrahim, a fantastic master trainer on the topic of emotional intelligence and hypnotherapy. Don't be hypnotizing us right now, Mona. Let me get you for 30 seconds to share your thoughts. How critical, Mona, is emotional intelligence and EQ in the world we're living in now? You want to unmute yourself, Mona? You can go ahead. Love to hear from you. And again, if there's anybody else on the call, if you guys want to have just kind of a little thought on the world we're living in, love to hear from you. Go ahead.
Hi, Omar.
Go ahead, Mona.
How are you? It's the first time I'm attending your calls. Well, I just typed in. So first of all, emotional intelligence is, of course, nowadays so much more important than the IQ. We all know that. And it is important, especially in these days. Like you said, or like many others said before, it's a self-awareness that is very important, but also this awareness of others. And that's basically what empathy is. And I just want to, from my point of view, and that's what I just shared here on the chat box, from my point of view, there is a huge difference between empathy and selfishness or selflessness.
Yeah.
So empathy is really the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand the other person. You can still be selfish whilst having empathy.
That's it.
You can be empathic but still be selfish. And to be really true, we are all selfish.
Yeah.
We are all selfish. I'm writing a book about selfishness because many people say selfishness is something bad. So we are selfish. We all have that "what is in it for me" syndrome in us.
And wouldn't you say, Mona, that, you know, if we didn't have that, maybe people wouldn't get out of bed, right? And just a precondition to empathy will be listening skills, right? And we speak, and when I'll get you involved a little bit later on as well, we speak about those 5 levels of listening. We've got a couple of people, or some of the people returning on our calls. Would love for you guys to reflect on what we covered. Remember those 5 levels of listening. Level 1 is ignoring. Level 2 is pretending. Looking on your phone, you're like, I'm listening. Level 3 is selective listening. That's what I practice at home every day. No, I'm kidding. No, right? I only listen to what I want to listen to. No, selective listening, active or attentive listening, level 4, which is what you're doing right now. And then the highest level of listening, of course, that Mona spoke about, empathy, which is you listen not with the intent to reply, you listen with the intent to understand. Quickly then, while I have you guys, I need a little favor from you. Can you all make an okay sign like this, an okay sign like this? Can you please make an okay sign? Listen, I'm watching some of the videos. Love to see you guys make an okay sign. Salam al-Kindi, let me see you make an okay sign like this. Can I get you please to put it on your chin, please? Can you please ask you to put it on your chin, please? Very good, Ashad, got it. You're putting it on your cheek, sir. Your chin, sir. Just messing with you guys. We've got senior leaders. I hope we know the difference between cheek and chin. Goodness, why did you all put it here? Why did you all put it here? You know the power of body language, right? What % of communication is body language? Love to hear from you quickly in the chat box. What % of overall communication is body language? What would you say? 50% Arshad? Love to hear from a couple of us. 80% Hassan Amin, of course. Hajra is with us as well. Hajra, welcome. Hajra has been listening to every call I've had for the past month. I'm going to run out of jokes here, Hajra. No, I'm kidding. So about 80%, yeah, about 2/3 is not even what we say, it's how we say it, right? And then the other parts are obviously paraverbal, the intonation, the tonality of voice. And then only 7% are the words we use. Hassan Amin, for you, 100% for sure body language, right? But 7% of the words we use. So what would we focus on more? One last comment, and we'll go into the breakout rooms. In this time, for those of you who've got young children at home, obviously, or for those of you who are kind of doing these Zoom calls with your teams and so on, all eyes on the boss, right? All eyes on you. People are able to pick up like this, right? They're able to sniff fear. They're able to sniff negativity. You know, for the senses of a human child, the last one to fully develop was a sense of speech, right? So children are 3-4 years old when they start to speak properly. So children became masters of reading body language, right? Mom and dad walk home, children are like, it's a good day, bad day, what's going on, right? We become masters, and then we grow up, and then we become employees, and then we look at our bosses, good day, bad day today, right? So we become masters of reading body language. Look, guys, fantastic engagement. Love to have these calls. That's why we do them every Thursday at 11 a.m. Dubai time. I'd love for you to go into smaller rooms now. Here's what I'm going to do. Now, don't run away after this because people are like, oh, too much pressure. Well, it's a comfort zone. So I'm going to set you guys up in breakout rooms. Here's what's going to happen. The moment I divide you into about 8 groups of 6 or so, you're going to get a little notification. Please do accept it. The moment you accept it, you'll go into these breakout rooms. Please do unmute yourself. And I'm going to give you about 6 to 7 to 8 minutes or so in your groups. What I'd love for you to talk about is introduce yourself, of course, and then a quick discussion around what are you guys doing in your organizations. We've got Emirates NBD on the call. We've got Salam Air on the call. We've got people from PSTD. We've got other banks as well. We've got Rack Bank also, pharmaceutical companies, and aviation, of course. I'd love to hear from you in these little rooms. What are you guys doing in your teams, in your organization right now to increase the level of EQ? Are birthday cakes being cut virtually? Are you still sending those appreciation or recognition emails? What are you guys doing? I know some companies doing these fitness challenges online. Clearly not me, but so love to hear from you guys in these little rooms. I'm going to be dividing you guys now. You will get a notification. Please accept it and go into your rooms, and then I'll collapse the rooms in about 7 to 8 minutes. Here we go. Adnan, are you here by yourself? Feeling a little bit lonely, Adnan? All right, man, let me try to get some people.
Yes.
Let me try to get
I just joined.
No worries. Nobody likes you. Nobody wants to be in your room. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
No. I just joined. I missed the half an hour.
No worries, man. We've got a long way to go still.
Okay.
Most of my work also is depending on the let's say body emotion, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah, this is very important to have it. Most of my just work based on the body emotions and how to deal directly with the with
That's from Al Zahra Hospital, Dubai. I would like to share what we are doing. In fact, we are doing many different levels. From the CEO, we have a weekly message about the updates. Very transparent, what's current situation, what we are doing.
It's a very quiet room here. Only a couple of people. Rani and Babar, why aren't you guys talking to each other? Very well, guys. I will be collapsing the rooms in about 2 minutes.
And to actually develop your people, take this opportunity, right?
Yes,
With the e-learning. Is that something that was happening before, or it's happening directly as a result of our newfound reality?
It wasn't really happening before. It was, but the participation or the percentage wasn't that high. But since we've come to this new way of living and learning, we are drifting towards it very aggressively.
So they've really found a way to find the silver.
Really helping a lot, and everyone gets engaged. The first 40 minutes was on happiness.
Zubina, I think we should go back because the time has been completed.
No, don't worry. I'll collapse the rooms in about 45 seconds or so.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give this input that this is what we have started and this is what we are doing to answer your question, Omar. Yeah.
Zamina, how are you doing?
Doing fine, thank you, Omar. It's a treat to join your webinars and all.
Zamina, I've spoken to everybody else who works for you except you.
Yeah, I by the way, they don't work for me, they work with me. But yes, Omar, I don't know how it happened, but maybe soon we should talk to each other in more detail.
I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to work together. Okay, guys, I'm going to be collapsing the rooms right now. We'll see you guys in the big room.
All right.
Very well, guys. Welcome to our living room. We're back. We're back where we left off things. Very well then. We'll get going, and we've still got the adaptability conversation to have. And the last 5 minutes or so, we will leave for some questions and comments. Again, love to hear from you guys in the chat box, your thoughts and opinions on how the next little while will be for us. Remember, these calls are happening every Thursday at 11 a.m. And then obviously, I'll put that Gadlang YouTube channel as well, where if you want to hear my same jokes again, you can come back and listen to us. Okay, so here we go. I wanted to just talk about that last bit, which is relationship management, and then go on to the topic of adaptability. The only thing I'll say on relationship management is this idea of inspirational leadership. I've spoken about this in the very first session we have. I genuinely believe, and every call that we're having is telling us the same, maybe an opportunity of a lifetime to display leadership. So we've got learning and development professionals from all over the world. Every time we're talking to our clients, that's what they're telling us, that we'll never have an opportunity for learning and development like this, for leadership like this, where, you know, the true ethos of a leader, the true kind of value-based leadership shines. So if you're not displaying leadership now, if not now, then when? If we're not developing ourselves, then if not now, then when? Well, just wanted to, in that context, show you this. We won't have a lot of time to cover this simply because, you know, leadership we have covered in the previous call. We do have another call coming up around leadership next week, next Thursday at 11 a.m. Dubai time. But I just wanted to put it up there. Obviously, Daniel Goleman, Richard Bayat have done tons of work on EI leadership, on emotionally intelligent leadership. And they talk about this idea of 6 styles of leadership. What I'd like for you to reflect on just for a moment in the chat box, love to hear from you. What are you seeing right now from your organizations? What are you seeing from your managers? And for those of your business owners, what kind of leadership style are you practicing right now? I was on a call yesterday with one of our clients, and they were talking about how it's all kind of pace setting, right? So it's just, you know, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., nonstop, you know, bombardment of, you know, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and in a couple of weeks we're going to change the world. Is it very kind of pace setting? Is it authoritative? Is it more coaching? So are you getting some mentorship or coaching in these times? What about affiliative leadership, which is the kind of, you know, messaging, you know, cake cutting and making sure people are okay and sending them the thank you notes and telling them how proud they are of what they've achieved. Love to hear from you in the chat box then. What kind of leadership are you seeing from your managers? What kind of leadership are you practicing? Honest answer right now, is it kind of pace setting, authoritative, telling people what to do? Are you finding yourself selling people on what to do? So, you know, keep doing it, come on, you know, rah, 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 let's go. Have you moved on to a more participative style of leadership where a leader's walking in, they're not telling people what to do, they're not selling them on what to do, they're saying, guys, what should we do? Or have you gone to that zenith of leadership where you're not telling people what to do, you're not selling them on what to do, you don't even need to ask what you should do, people know what to do, right? That's that kind of empowered, the highest level of leadership. Zubina says, you know, be helpful to subordinates, right? And Ahmed says it can't be one type of leadership. Of course, absolutely, Ahmed. That idea of adaptive leadership and situational leadership. Ken Blanchard's done a ton of work on. Zubina says a combination of affiliative and visionary from my board. Of course, a strong board you have out there at PSTD. Hajra says a mixture of couching. I'm sure you meant coaching. Hajra, I know what you mean. Just kidding. A lot of couching happening as well these days. Right, and assignments and this idea of being more participative and affiliative. So just love for you to reflect on that for a few seconds. What are you practicing? What are you seeing from yourself and from your leaders? Last little bit of our conversation. Wanted to talk to you about adaptability and agility. In one of our conversations we had right a couple of weeks ago, I've forgotten, we're doing so many webinars right now, is this idea of ability to change, ability to adapt. I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. Saba, if you want to just give us your opinion on this, obviously Saba, Canadian board certified dietitian and nutritionist. You know, she's busy right now with people calling her saying, I'm getting in the fridge all the time. Let me ask you, Saba, maybe you want to unmute yourself. A critical question for you and an important question for everyone. What do you think are the reasons why most people, and I'm generalizing here, by most people would do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? So why do we have this kind of resistance to change? And Tony Robbins says, if you work the same way for 10 years, you haven't worked 10 years, you worked your first year 10 times, right? So why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again? Love to hear from you, Saba, or anyone else. If you guys want to raise your hand and maybe 30 to 60 seconds, share your thoughts. Why such resistance to change? Zubina says comfort zone, right? Many of us are kind of stuck in our comfort zone. Salia, if you're on the call with us as well, Salia from Reform HR, these guys are busy right now helping people with contracts who are either being laid off or will be laid off. You guys are busy with that. Salia, I'd love to hear from you on this idea of why resistance to change even in these times.
Omar, if I may chime in,
Go ahead.
I think sometimes, yes, it is a resistance of change. We're not ready to make that change. We haven't gone through the stages of change yet. But for some people who are ready and still can't manage to make the changes they want to make, I think a lot of it goes back to thinking the same way or operating with the same information, which may not be enough to achieve the change they're looking for.
Yeah.
So I think trying to affect change without necessarily changing your thinking when you see that it's failed several times previously. So one of the things you can do is develop yourself, increase your sort of database, increase your skill base to then actually be able to affect these changes more successfully, to get the tools that you need to help you achieve these changes. So for example, what we're discussing today, emotional intelligence, is definitely one way to affect the sort of change you want in your personal, professional health relationships.
Lubna, thank you so much, Saba, for that. Lubna says this historical organizational mindset, right? I know exactly what you mean, Lubna. We've so many organizations we're speaking to right now, and unfortunately, maybe their core business, what they used to do, no longer relevant, right? Look, it has happened before when the internet came. If you guys had, if anybody had a job that had to do with not the digital world, I mean, you were out of work. I mean, when Uber came, if you're a taxi car driver, too bad. So it has happened in the past, but my goodness, sometimes organizations like Titanic, right? Like so difficult to move. Even when they see the iceberg coming, they just cannot move. There's resistance to change. Saba, I love what you said about development. And one of the questions we're asking ourselves, and I'm asking myself, is what is one skill, one behavior, and one attitude that I'd like to change in the time that we're in right now, right? So what is one skill? Remember the difference between skills, behaviors, and attitudes. I've covered this in a previous call, but we've got some new people as well. So remember, a skill is something you can learn, that you can teach. A behavior is something that gets influenced, right? So, well, the example is time management is a skill. Not being on time is a behavior, and not caring to be on time is an attitude, right? So one of the things that I'd love for us to work on as a bit of an EQ plan for us, as a bit of a plan after this, is what are some skills, behaviors, and attitudes that we'll be learning once this thing is done. That's the only way we come out of this better, right? People keep saying, well, nobody's going to come out of this better. I genuinely disagree. I think a winner finds the opportunity in every difficulty, and unfortunately, losers find the difficulty in every opportunity. Got the last 5 minutes to go. Kind of wanted to come out of this. Of course, yeah, of course, winners will find the opportunity in this difficulty and come out as winners. Mona's talking about how people are more creative and innovative. We've seen that as well. Even in our clients now talking about reallocation of resources. Salia is on the call with us. Reform and her company is doing a lot of work on force majeure, right? So all of a sudden, everything's become a force majeure, right? So people are becoming more creative with how to get out of their contracts. or how to get more money from their employers right now as well. Last little slide I wanted to leave you guys with, this idea of agility and adaptability, right? Again, remember this slide deck will be on the YouTube channel as well, which I will put up in a second here. In fact, Arshad, get it if you're there, Arshad, if you want to get that YouTube channel link and put it up for us in the chat box while I cover this. So this idea of a cooperation, right? This is what we're doing right now. Every Thursday, we're getting 60, 70, 80 professionals from different parts of the world, different levels, and all we're doing is learning together. Maybe you'll agree that people do feel better after these calls. So people are like, this is pretty good, it's motivational, kind of high energy kind of stuff, because it's groupthink, right? So it's not monotonic death by PowerPoint, it's cooperation. You get to share your views, and again, Lubna, thank you for your participation in the chat box as well. One thing I keep hearing, and people talking a lot about this idea of paralysis by analysis, right? So everything from ordering Zomato to making a decision, just taking too long to make decisions. Sometimes paralysis from analysis. So be careful. The speed of decision making, right? Too much information, getting bombarded by too much information could inhibit our ability to make decisions. Number three, this trial tolerance, right? This idea of we're going to try new things. We might fail. Do I have the capacity to fail? Because wouldn't you all agree that failure is a better teacher than success? Failure is a better teacher than success. In our life, we've learned more from things that we didn't do well in than the things that we did well in. So trial tolerance, empowerment. If you've got a team right now, if you've got a team of people who work with you, as Zubina corrected me, not for you, but when you've got a team that works with you, empowerment, right? So, giving people the opportunity to try things now gives them adaptability and agility, and yourself as well. And this idea of adoption of technology, we're doing it right now. Who would have thought? I should get it. Who would have thought we're doing subscribe to my YouTube channel? Who would have thought we'd be doing stuff like that? And then, this idea of, for me, a big one, knowledge sharing. I cannot emphasize enough. We've got HR consultants on the call with us. Maybe a few months ago, some of us were fighting with each other on clients, and here we are today, sharing knowledge, because that's how we're going to get out of this. No one is as good as the sum of us, right? It's not the SOME sum of us, but the SUM sum of us, right? If you want to go far, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And the last little bit, which is this idea of technology adoption, this idea of creativity, innovation focus. I'll say my 2 cents on this, and then we'll open it up to any questions or comments that you have, and I'll just make sure I share the YouTube link with you as well. Just want to make sure this idea of innovation focus. History, I was reading a fantastic article the other day, which talks about how one of the things we all suffer from is something called a normalcy bias, right? So many of us, we suffer from this idea that things will go back to normal, right? So we have this idea in our mind that at some point things will go back to normal. Well, maybe things won't go back to normal, right? So maybe this is the new normal that we're living in now. And I guess the idea would be, how do we react differently as opposed to where we were before? So here's what I'd like to do now. We've got about 5 minutes or so left. I realize that we've got some questions and comments that have been asked over the past little while. The last 5 minutes or so, if anybody would like to share their thoughts, and obviously in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, 30 to 60 seconds, over to you guys. I will put that YouTube link as well. Gadlang Management Consultancy. Please do make sure you subscribe, because that's where we do keep putting these conversations up with, and these calls that we have. Here we go then. Any thoughts, any comments? You speak now or you hold your peace forever. Any thoughts, any comments on emotional intelligence, adaptability, this idea of EQ over IQ? Remember the 15 underlying areas of emotional intelligence and self-appraisal and self-expression and stress management and impulse control and empathy and adaptability. The idea of optimism and achievement drive, contentment, all those areas of emotional intelligence. Any thoughts then before we wrap up? Go ahead, sir.
This is Ahmad, SIG Combat Block. Omar, just one thing. Based on my work, usually on daily basis, I'm working honestly on dealing directly with stakeholders, with the banks, with others, which is I'm using my body language all the time. Now, during this quarantine, let's say, and using online, using internet, it's not easy just to use your skills. So you have to adapt, or you to create, or just have new skills, how to deal with people, even from the voice you are talking with, even with deal with your boss, how just to communicate, dealing with your family also. So a lot of skills to be added here.
Yeah.
So as a leaders, how we can gain from this, instead of being negative, how to be more positive in this, that you are gaining here. You are gaining in the same time, how just to reflect it in your life even after we finish all of this, inshallah, how it will be work with you after that. So we have now we are using Zoom, we are using a lot of internet. In coming time, maybe maybe I will be off, or in my country, I can use the same skills, I can use the same way to deal with the people, to deal even with my stakeholders in the work, even with the banks. So
Ahmed, wouldn't you say, thank you so much, Ahmed, especially our friends from Dunya, very important to express ourselves, physically, and the hand gestures and body language and so on. You'd agree, Ahmed, that we're having to do things now that a lot of us resisted. I remember in e-learning and this idea of doing virtual sessions, something we resisted, for years. And then, here we are now, and how quickly we've had to adapt and to be agile. And one thing you said, I loved, Ahmed, you said, as a manager, as a leader, maybe I'm going to find out that the way I was able to build trust with my team, can't do it anymore. Right? So maybe the way I was able to, have a feedback, coaching conversations, right? Can't do that anymore. So my goodness, we're going to have to learn. And that's why I guess sessions, of personal development, taking the time thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to attend these calls, because we listen and we learn together. Anybody else? Love to hear from you. Any thoughts? Again, for those of you who do need to sign off, perfectly fine. Thank you so much. Remember, every Thursday at 11 a.m., if you've got nothing else to do in your life, please do join us for these calls, which are fantastic opportunities for us to learn and listen to each other. In case you have any questions or comments, love to hear from you now. No attendance certificates. Just
I want to just add one thing which you actually said.
Go ahead,
Omar. I think I always sort of keep saying that in every single presentation I ever go to. So if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got. So I think this is the time for us to adopt and change. And a lot of changes I have seen already happening. People are so excited, and your team, when you tell them that let's come up with opportunities, let's not think about client not paying and things are not getting the way we've always got
elections
done.
Yeah,
it's fine. You actually will. We are a different beast. We will come up with ideas. We will come up with opportunities out of it. So yeah, things are changing, but changing in the right direction. Perhaps we've adopted a lot of new things which we just mentioned. Ahmed just mentioned that we've taken the Zoom and others ways and tools of communicating with each other. So yeah, I think change is coming, and we have to adopt it.
I'm just going to put my, sorry to interrupt you, Arshad. I'm just going to put my email address, guys. Some people are asking about how we can get the invitations for every week. Just send me an email or my colleague an email. Some of you have received it from her, and we'll we'll definitely send you guys an email. Where, you know, the best thing that's happening out of these webinars is all these organizations, right? They're getting us to come in maybe 60, 90 minutes, these VILTs, right? These virtual instructor-led training sessions, you know, which is an opportunity for people, you know, we don't want people to put away their phones and wash their dishes, right? We want your attention and focus on these calls, and that's why it's engaging. Thank you so much, Sabina, for your comments as well. Thank you so much, guys, for joining our call just on the hour here at noon Dubai time. If you guys have any questions or comments, I'm going to hang back a little bit longer. Otherwise, thank you so much. I'll again put up that YouTube link. I hope that's the right YouTube link. And then we'll see you guys next week, next Thursday, 11 a.m. Dubai time. And next week, what I'd love to talk to you about is this idea of motivational leadership, inspirational leadership, and a positive outlook, but from a remote setting. So remote teams, how to work remotely and how to manage your teams remotely. I'd love to have some of our callers from Talia, Sabah, love to have you guys back with us talking about this idea of how do we work from home? Like, do we keep our shoes on or not? I mean, that's my biggest question, right? I mean, like, you know, how do you keep yourself motivated and at work? Alexandra, thank you so much for contributing. I'd love to hear from you guys. If there's no other questions or comments, thank you so much, guys, for hanging out. God bless, be safe, stay home, and we'll see you guys next Thursday, 11 a.m. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.